We are live now.
All right, I'll try it again. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our special budget meeting. I'd like to start by recognizing and acknowledging the Esquimalt and Songhees nations whose traditional territories we live, we learn, and we do our work. I'd like to start by doing some introductions. We have some representation from partners, rights holders, school leaders, and I'd like you to introduce yourself and just say who you're here representing. And then we'll go around the table inside here in the boardroom. And Sarah, can I start with you because you're the first person I see on the screen?
Absolutely. Good evening. Hi, my name is Sarah Winkler. I am here as the president of the Victoria Principals and Vice Principals Association.
Welcome. And Julie? Julie, I see you next on the screen. You want to say hello?
Hi, my name is Julie Lautner. I'm the Associate Secretary Treasurer.
And Shelley, I see you next.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Shelley Wilton, and I'm the Director for Indigenous Education with the Greater Victoria School District.
You're welcome. Norm?
Hi, yes, my name is Norman Isaac. I'm QP 382 president.
Welcome, thank you. And Shauna?
Good evening. I am Shauna Abbott, president of QP 947.
Thank you. Annabelle?
Hi, Annabelle Foxester, Student Success Manager, Songhees Nation.
Welcome. Erin?
Hello, I'm Erin Glasgow, Director of Education for Songhees Nation.
Carolyn?
Hi, I'm Carolyn Howe, President of the Greater Victoria Teachers Association.
And I see Chris is with you. Hi, Chris.
Hi, my name is Chris Clark. I'm the first Vice President of the Greater Victoria Teachers Association.
Okay, I think we'll go and introduce anyone else that hasn't been introduced let's see. Oh, Marnie, you haven't. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Marnie Vistison. I'm the Director of Facilities.
Thanks. And in this room, I'm Sherry Bell. I'm official trustee with the Greater Victoria School District, and we'll go around this table here.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Arts, Associate Superintendent with the Greater Victoria School District.
Good evening, everyone. Sean Powell, Acting Associate Superintendent.
And I'll wait for the owl to come to me. And I'm Katrina Stride, Secretary Treasurer for the Greater Victoria School District.
Thank you. Thank you and welcome everyone, and welcome to people that are tuning in. You were just introduced to our Secretary Treasurer, Katrina Stride, and you'll hear a lot from her tonight. As we go through the budget, I'm hoping people had the opportunity to take a quick look through the package. And what we'll be doing is I'm going to pass it over to Katrina, who will go through once we approve the agenda, all of B. She's got a PowerPoint. She's going to do quite a lengthy presentation. And the presentation will follow the package that you received. After that, we will have question and answers that have been questions that have been submitted, and we will take a look at those and answer the questions that have been submitted. And then, of course, people that are on the screen here, you can ask any questions that you have at that point. If you've got a question and you think it needs to be asked while Katrina is presenting, please feel free to just put your hand up and I'll recognize you. And I'm sorry, the superintendent, Deb Witten, you moved around on the screen, so I kind of lost you for a moment. Welcome, Deb.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'd like to present the motion to approve the agenda. That motion is carried, and we'll move to the annual budget presentation, and I'm going to pass it to our Secretary Treasurer for this.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen as we have a PowerPoint presentation, and then when I get to the end, I'll stop sharing before we ask questions. If you do have a question, it might be a good idea to put your electronic hand up, because I won't be able to see everyone. That would be great. So we'll start off the presentation of the 2025-2026 annual budget. Actually, before I jump into this, I always want to acknowledge the people who are doing the hard work for the budget, and we have two of them here with us this evening. Julie Lutner, who's the Associate Secretary Treasurer, and also Harvinder Parmar, who's our Director of Finance, Budgets, and Financial Reporting. Huge amount of work that goes into the budget, and the piece that I'm doing is really just a very small piece of this work. So thank you so much for all that you do. Jumping into values and guiding principles, just to highlight that the values and guiding principles are included in the agenda package, the full document. And this screen right here just highlights that all of our budget decisions are to be aligned with the district strategic plan, goals and strategies, as well as the district enhancing student learning report. So these are the three goals that are within our strategic plan. We've included in the agenda package also the full budget development process from when the process began back in November, and also upcoming events to April 8th and beyond next week. So this slide is what we have heard so far. And we've got November, December, we put out an initial feedback survey out to the public to obtain feedback on what the priorities were for the 25-26 budget. Those results were reported to the board in January. And then we also did student connections meetings. So there were meetings with all of the middle and secondary schools between November and January. And those results were also reported to the board in January. And then since then, we've had two in-person events. On March 5th, we had an internal budget working session, and that was an invite out to representatives from the four houses, our education partners, VPVPA, senior leadership team, the official trustee, and also members of the district leadership team. And that was an in-person meeting during the day. And on March 27th, we held an evening in-person session for parents, guardians, and caregivers, some who were unable to attend on March 5th. And I just want to highlight some of the feedback that we received from those two in-person events. The feedback we heard was that we need more student supports in the areas of inclusive education and also mental health. Also, just need more learning resources in general, including technology and classroom supplies. And then there was also some feedback on maintenance and upgrades to facilities. We have some feedback opportunities that are coming up. After this meeting, you'll be able to provide some electronic feedback regarding what's been presented this evening. And there is the link. It's the same link that you would have used to submit questions. There's the two questions, two opportunities to provide feedback. One was to submit questions, and then this one will be to provide feedback. That will be available until 4 o'clock on April 7th. And on April 3rd, which is tomorrow at 6:30, we're having another internal budget working session. This one is in the evening. It's online. And again, invites have been sent out to representatives, the same representatives who were invited to the one on March 5th. On April 8th at 6:30, we will have our special board meeting. This is where the budget will be presented to our official trustee with 3 budget bylaw readings for approval. And then after the budget is approved, we'll be putting out a budget development survey, similar to last year, with a couple of questions, looking for feedback on the process itself. And we'll be using that information to help guide us as we do our planning for next year's process. So that survey will be launched on the 11th and will close on the 23rd. And we will provide the feedback at the April 28th board meeting. So just jumping into the budget overview, the budget scope, the board approved budget actually is comprised of 3 separate funds. So our operating fund, special purpose fund, and capital fund. I will be touching on all 3 of these, but we will be focusing mainly on the operating fund. And then just adding in here that there is legislation that requires school district boards to approve a balanced operating budget where revenues equal expenses. We're unable to submit a budget that is in a deficit balance. However, we are able to use unspent operating budget from prior years to be able to balance. And just a highlight of the budget cycle. It's a continuous cycle. We're sometimes in 2 years at the same time. We just had our final budget for the current year approved in February. We submitted our enrollment projections for next year in February. The ministry gave us our funding announcement in March, and here we are in April, looking for board approval of the budget for next year. So now we're going into the operating budget. And just a highlight of enrollment. So this table shows the breakdown of school-aged enrollment. As you can see, it's relatively stable from the actual results in September for the year we're in right now to what we're projecting for 25-26. So this table also shows you the breakdown of the funding for unique student needs. So that includes inclusive education, English language learners, and Indigenous education. And then I've also included in there the enrollment numbers that are projected for the regular program for international students. So slight decline there. This table is just showing you the funding levels per FTE, the ministry operating grant. So from the prior year to the current year. And you can see that all of the levels increased by 1.1%. And this increase is directly tied to labor settlement funding for wage increases that were announced after March 2024. And this is the operating revenue table. And this shows, actually what I'll do is I'll just summarize some of the larger variances that are in the revenue table. So for example, you can see under provincial grants, 6.9 million increase. And that increase comes from 4 different places. 1.4 million of that increase is from enrollment increase. 2.1 million is from per student funding increase. 0.2 million from English language learners, and 3.2 million from inclusive education. Jumping down to tuition, you can see a 0.7 million decrease, and that is due to the decrease in international student enrollment. Other revenue is up by 0.2 million, and this is due to an increase in other fees that are in international education. So for example, fee forfeitures, homestay fees, and activity fees. And rentals and leases are up by 0.5 million. And this is due to the Consumer Price Index, CPI increase for out-of-school care licenses. They pay to occupy space on school grounds, and also we had a new license to occupy. And lastly, investment income. We're seeing a decline of 0.5 million, and that's due to declining interest rates. As you hear in the news, the Bank of Canada rate keeps dropping, and so we are projecting a 1% further decrease in our interest rates for 25-26. This is just a way to visualize our revenue. So you can see that most of our revenue comes from provincial grants, 91.2%, with everything else, which is all the other revenues I touched on, making up 8.8%. And now moving into operating expenses, salaries, we are up there 5.9 million. And in the 24-25 budget didn't include any wage increases related to labor settlement funding that was announced after March 2024. So that makes up most of the difference. I'll also add that because all of our current collective agreements expire on June 30th, 2025, we haven't built in any further general wage increases. So we will wait for those announcements before they're built in. What we have built in, though, are regular step increases for teachers, principals and vice principals, and other professionals and substitutes. And employee benefits are up 0.3 million when we have some wage sensitive components to our benefits. So as salaries increase, the benefits also increase. And we've also seen that the CPP contribution limit has gone up effective January 1st. And also our employer portion of the premiums for extended health and dental. And services and supplies are up 0.3 million. This is coming from a few different places. Student transportation is up by 0.2 million, and that's directly related to an increase in inclusive education enrollment, so more runs were needed for the buses. Professional development and travel has gone up by 0.1 million, and that was just really a budget reallocation between TTOC or substitute salaries and benefits for a GVTA Pro D. Supplies are up by 0.1 million, and that's directly related to the increase in enrollment compared to last year. And the only one that is going down is the utilities, down by 0.1 million, and that's due to a reduction in natural gas usage compared to what was budgeted in the prior year. So we're seeing warmer temperatures on the average. We are participating in continuous optimization programs with both BC Hydro and Fortis. And where possible, we're doing boiler upgrades to try to find efficiencies. And this graph just shows you the breakdown of our operating expenses. Salaries and benefits make up 92.3%, and everything else is 7.7%. And this table shows just a different breakdown of our expenses. It's called by function. You can see that it's gone up, the 8.7 million that it's gone up, 7.5 million of that increase is from instruction. And it's another visual for you to be able to see that 85.5% of our operating expenses are related to instruction or the delivery of learning. Operations and maintenance is 11.2%, and then district administration at 2.6%, and transportation and housing at 0.7%. We put this slide in here. It is taking the expenses that are projected for 25-26 that are included in your agenda compared to the provincial average in 24-25. So they don't have 25-26 numbers, obviously. So here you can see our instruction breakdown. We're quite a bit higher than the provincial average, lower in administration, and just slightly higher in operations. And this actually just shifted because the last numbers we looked at, it was just slightly lower, and lower in transportation. So now we'll just talk about where we ended up once all of the budget work was done by our financial services. We were looking at a deficit of 5.1 million. What we have to help put towards that are two motions that were carried by the board. One from 23-24 and one from 24-25. Surpluses to be used to offset the deficit. The total of those surpluses is 3.4 million, which left us around 1.7 million. We had to find some one-time or ongoing savings. And so included in your agenda package in a couple of places, in the memo, you can see a narrative around the items that are being proposed to balance the budget for 25-26. Also included is a worksheet that has the list with the numbers in worksheet format. I've got them on the screen here, so I'll just go through them and explain what each one is. So the first section we'll look at are reductions, and these are one-time reductions. So the first item there is for 400,000 reduction. This is for educational assistant unfilled absences and vacancies. So this is a historical surplus that we have at year end, and it's just due to our inability to fill all of the absences and vacancies for EAs. So 400,000 for that. The next one is also around educational assistant positions. This is a budgeted position in inclusive education, but it does not historically fill. So there isn't an individual in this role. We're saying that it's a 30-hour per week position, doesn't get filled, so we won't budget for it. Network infrastructure, delaying some projects until 26-27, 459,000. These were budgeted for access switches, some of which will be purchased in 24-25, but the remainder will now be shifted until 26-27 or later. We have a maintenance painter, 40 hours per week on the list. This is a vacant position and we will keep it unfilled for 1 year. That's 97,000. And 175,000, putting a pause on the refresh of iPads for K-2, and doing this in order to review the pedagogy around technology use in K-2 classrooms. The aviation program, this is the second year we've been unable to fill the teacher position after a teacher retired. And so this is a 1 year again, 45,000. And then we have Entrust and Net Control software, which I understand are around data and cloud security. And these were already prepaid in the previous year, so the budget is not needed for 25-26, but it will be needed again in 26-27. We have a reduction of legal fees. So we're not anticipating the same level of legal fees as were incurred in past years for lease agreements, joint use agreements, and also land sale. We have here a clerical 35-hour per week position. This is at SJ Burnside, and it's intended to align clerical staffing at SJ Burnside to similar sized locations. That's 54,000. There's also a district early childhood educator, ECE, 30 hours per week. Now, this position was added to the budget in 22-23. It was intended to cover replacements at equity deserving schools, but it's actually not required for this purpose at this time. And the last one in this section is around the additional EA mentor position. This was a position that was added during the 24-25 budget process. The reason it's being pulled out is that the collective agreement only includes language for one mentor. And so my understanding is that additional, or the potential for additional mentors will be part of the upcoming bargaining process. We have a one-time addition of 200,000 for student devices. These are devices that are to be added to schools exclusively to help support students with IEPs, AIPs who require a device. 200,000. Maintenance electrician, 40 hours per week. This is an add-on. This is a legislated position that is required to do, I believe it's the documentation around monthly firearm verification. This ad is being offset by the reduction in the painter position. And there's a one-time reallocation that's listed there, 260,000. And what we'll be doing is using local capital reserve for 260,000 of capital asset purchases, including technology that would have been purchased out of operating funds. And the last items here are the two surplus amounts that I previously mentioned, 1.8 million from 23-24 surplus, 1.6 million from projected 24-25 surplus, and also an additional projected surplus at the end of 24-25 following the implementation of expenditure management for the last quarter of the year, tied with a reduction in reserves at schools. School reserves have been reduced from 40,000 to 25,000 at elementary and middle, and from 80,000 to 50,000 at secondary for the past 2 years. So we would be extending that out again for 1 more year. And since we're talking about the operating fund, I'll just mention that we also have a multi-year financial plan that focuses on the operating fund, and it gives us a look not only at 25-26, but also years beyond that. So when we create the multi-year financial plan, we use the 25-26 annual budget as a starting point. And then we adjust future years for any of the one-time budget decisions. So anything that was on the list that I just read through that said one time, those have already been adjusted in these numbers. The provincial grant and the international revenue and related expenses are based on projected enrollments for future years. Other revenues, salaries and benefits have been held constant, and we have not included any inflationary increases. So this is the report in summary format, shows the student FTE revenue and expenses. Where it says interfund transfers, those are the purchases of capital assets, which will include our technology plans. And you can see use of accumulated surplus. There's the 3.6 million that we've set aside to help balance the budget in 25-26. We're unable to project surplus beyond the year that we're in now. Without a surplus, you can see that 26, 27, and 27, 28, we're looking at deficits of around 5 million. Special purpose funds. This table here just shows all of the revenue that we budgeted for special purpose funds. We match revenue to expense when we do our budget for these. Our revenue is expected to be 0.9 million higher in 25-26 than in 24-25. And I'll just highlight some of the larger changes. So we have an increase in the provincial resource program revenues, and that's due to some new funding for inclusion, outreach, literacy. We did a slight decrease in school generated funds, just based on what estimated spending is. There is an increase in OLEF, which is a federal French, due to just updating the funding amounts provided in 24-25 that were after the preparation of the annual budget. There's an increase in classroom enhancement funds, or CEF, due to labor settlement funding. And we have a decrease in the student and family affordability funds, and that's because that program is wrapping up and we're anticipating it will be fully spent by the end of the current year. And lastly, there was a new professional learning grant received in 24-25 after the preparation of the preliminary budget in April. And the capital fund. So major changes that you can see, you see an investment income decline similar to what we had in operating. The gain on disposal of tangible capital assets, 3.8 in 24-25 is related to the land sale at Lansdowne. And we're seeing an increase in our amortization costs, and that's due to the completion of large projects, such as Vic High and Cedar Hill. So it's up 0.7 million. And there's a decrease in net transfers from other funds, and that's due to a reduction in the computer technology in 25-26. So this is what our budget bylaw currently looks like. This budget bylaw has incorporated all of the budget balancing recommendations that are being proposed this evening. So if there were any changes, the budget bylaw could also change depending on what it is. The balance bylaw that we are presenting this evening is 331,452,194, and that is across all three funds. And thank you. I'm going to pass it back over to our official trustee.
Thank you. That was a lot of information, but if you were following along in the package or took a look at the package, it should make sense. And I'm sure there are some questions. People were pretty quiet during the presentation. So I think what we'll do at this point is for the people that are on the screen with us, if you've got questions, we'll go to those first. And then we'll go to the 10 questions that came in, and I'll summarize or read them, and then we'll endeavor to answer all of the questions. A note to people that are listening in on YouTube, the question area on the website is open, and it will stay open until the 7th. So a lot of your, if you have questions, we'll be taking those to the meeting tomorrow with our working group and then looking at those again on the 8th. Some things that came in were not questions, they were comments and good comments. So we won't be needing to answer the comments, but please feel free to submit either. All right, I'm going to Shauna first. Hi.
Hi. So I had to write it down because I actually have quite a bit to say.
Okay.
So we have received your upcoming budget proposal, and myself, on behalf of CUPE 947, am very disappointed that the cuts are on the back of our members. CUPE 947 members are the support staff that are a fundamental part of the school district and support our students, staff, and parents. After reviewing your budget proposal recommendation, 5 of 11 proposals are reduction to CUPE 947 positions. Bullet 1 alone is 32% of the budget cuts. Bullet 2, the 30 hours per week EA position that historically does not fill, resulting in a one-time reduction of $54,662. We know that there are multiple unfilled positions, not because we don't need them, but because we cannot recruit a sufficient number of applicants. So my question is, what school is this 30-hour position attached to where this EA is no longer needed? Should I just read it all, and then if there's any questions to my questions?
Absolutely. It's up to you, Sean, if you want to stop and we can answer the question, or if you want to keep going, you decide.
Or maybe thoughts to bring back tomorrow. Bullet 9, SJ Burnside, is a unique school with unique needs. They're an alternate school, link online, and principal for Ledger House. Are we cutting positions because of size of the school or the needs of the student population? Bullet 10, the $54,180 cut in funding towards an additional 30 hours per week district early childhood education position at equity deserving schools. I know that for the board, equity in our schools is an important consideration, so I have a hard time understanding why this position is not required. To use your words, at this time. Is it necessary next year? Bullet 11. To me, this is the most concerning of the budget cuts. Cutting the second EA mentor position. If the school district is saving $400,000, not covering EA absences and vacancies, bullet 1, why can they not use $35,000 to keep this very important position? Due to the shortage of EAs in our district, we are hiring EAs that are not fully qualified. These mentor positions support staff in training and skills to best support our students with complex needs. Without these two positions, we would be experiencing more day-to-day challenges in our schools. The union would suggest we actually need more mentors, not to lose one. You have stated, I'm almost done. You've stated that CUPE 947 collective agreement only includes one EA mentor position. Therefore, additional mentor positions will be part of the upcoming bargaining process. For your information, while we recognize the importance of this position, it is currently a letter of understanding that has not yet been enshrined in the CA. Why would the board feel it is CUPE 947 responsibility to staff positions? This is the school district's responsibility. As I previously stated, you are saving $400,000 not filling positions, and I fail to understand why $35,000, which is less than 10%, could not be used for a second mentor. The local bargaining money is there for us to support all of our members. And we are currently using approximately $100,000, a quarter of these funds, to already fund these two mentor positions. So we would ask that you reconsider these options. As I stated, it is very disappointing to look at your reductions and the impact to our members and the students they support. Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna. If you don't mind, could we go back to some of your questions?
Absolutely.
See, some of them we won't be able to answer tonight,
Right.
but some we might be able to. So your first question, could you go back to that one and repeat it?
Yeah, so that's the 30-hour EA position that historically does not fill. So the question is, what school is this 30-hour position attached to where an EA is no longer needed?
Okay, and I'm going to just see if Superintendent Whitten or Secretary Treasurer or other people at this table can answer that question.
I can start if that's okay. Thank you, Shauna, and thank you for your comments. At this time, it's not connected to a school, so it's the overall budget that is brought forward to support all schools. So we would look at it from the staffing perspective. It's not connected to a school, but I certainly could come back and look at a school that may be impacted, but at this point, it is not directly connected to a school or an individual.
Thank you. Are you ready to go to your next question, Shauna?
Is about SJ Burnside, that are we cutting the position because of, oh, like, sorry, your question to answer or mine to ask?
You can ask, and we'll see if we have an answer. Thanks.
Are we cutting positions at SJ Burnside, like the 35 hours? Are we cutting the position because of the size of the school or the need of the student population?
I'm going to go to our Superintendent Whitten again.
Actually, sorry, can I also add into that question then, since it's part of it? So SJ Burnside is 3 different schools in one. So are the numbers also being populated based on the alternative school or the online linked school and the ledger? Like I think it's much more complex than just saying SJ Burnside has 200 students. Has that all been taken into consideration?
Thank you. Yes, it has been taken into consideration, and I think it's a combination. We're always mindful of the student population that attends both CE, Alt, and the Link, as well as Ledger, and the number of students. So it is in alignment with other similar size schools, with not to compare complexities, but we're looking at both as we look at this suggestion.
Thank you. I think Shauna, you were talking about the mentor position, and I don't think there was a question there. That was a reconsider this, given the fact that the $400,000 savings on unfilled positions, and this would support that. So I take your point there. Did you have any other questions that you think we could answer tonight?
I did ask about the ECE position. That's the 30-hour district early childhood bullet 10.
Right.
You know, so it's saying that this position is not required. This is for, very, it's for the equity schools. It's basically a floater position. And why all of a sudden it's not a required position this year? Like what has changed? Why would that not be a necessary position?
Thanks. I'll go back to Superintendent Whitten.
Yeah, I think for this one, as it came forward, it was meant to support one of the 10 priority schools. And as it was staffed, it became a second position in one of the schools. So I don't want to mislead that we don't need support or that we don't need ECEs. That's absolutely not what we're saying. But that position, as it was proposed, we did have one of an ECE in the school, and this was a second ECE. So I think that's what it was termed, as far as not at this time.
Okay, well, I hear the answers. I don't, obviously, my thoughts are different. I'm happy, Sherry, to send this statement / question / thoughts to you, for you to review a little bit closer, and have an understanding of where we're coming from. So
yeah, that would be terrific. Thank you for that, Shauna. Next hands up that I see, GVTA.
Thanks. Yeah, we have a few too. And I don't know how many to ask tonight, to tell you the truth. But let's start with, in the January 27th agenda budget update, the projected deficit was 1.9 million-ish. And then, so how can you explain the process to how we came to a sort of a $5 million deficit in those 3 months?
Secretary Treasurer?
Yeah. I can start off and then Associate Secretary Treasurer can jump in if I've missed anything. That we hesitate to put out deficit numbers. I think when we first started, our deficit was projected at around 300,000. And then the thing is that work really at that point is just beginning on building the budget. And so financial services is going through methodically through the budget, calculating average teacher salary, calculating flat rate benefits, teacher absences, like different things like that. And so each time they're coming across one, it might increase the deficit as we start to build it into the budget. So those are just some examples. I don't know if there are any others. Things that I think international education, we've had an enrollment decline. International education gives the school district just under, I believe, just under 40% of its gross revenue to help support services across the district. When we see a decline in their enrollment, we see a decline in that contribution. Inflationary costs, we did have to do some for software. Yeah, sorry, Julie, I don't know if you have anything else that I've missed. Trying to go through the list in my head.
Yeah, as we were starting to prepare the budget, we saw quite a few huge jumps, some that other districts are noticing across the province. Two really big ones are the increase in benefit costs, as well as increased TTOC costs. The other two are interest rates. As we know, interest rates keep declining. So interest rate calculation is a lot less than we had initially projected, as well as the Employment Standards Act leaves. Those took a jump this year.
Thanks. I also had a question about the district early childhood educator position. Can you tell us where that position has been deployed, and so where they will not be deployed next year?
I believe that was answered, but Superintendent Whitten, if you want to explain that one.
Yeah, I think given the sensitivity of the conversation, it would not be prudent to provide that this evening online. We can talk later, but we're talking about individuals.
Okay, reasonable. Thanks. I noticed that the increase to the operating grant this year is, considerably below inflation, which of course means that our operating grant is decreasing year over year. How's that being addressed with the minister and province?
Well, I can tell you that this is an issue across the province. It's you're right. When you look at 1.1% increase, that doesn't cover inflation, and there's a lot of different avenues that are looking at this exact thing. BCSTA, along with the Superintendents Association and conversations with government, it isn't enough to when you look at a structural deficit that we have, when you think about the $5 million where we started, and then how we had to look at carry forwards, and then having a $1.5 million deficit, this isn't going to change.
Great. Yeah, I know that the minister has very close eyes on our district right now, and I know that she is interested in meeting and discussing things regularly. So it's the GVTA's hope that, Sherry, you will take every opportunity when you meet with her to express that reality and the impact it has on our students in our district. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, more. I've got a couple more.
Okay.
If I may, is that all right?
Yes. Yeah, of course. Yes, go ahead.
Thanks. Around the iPads, we know that the student devices were removed due to sort of lack of safety, obsolescence, security. security risk, and then the cut to the program, I suppose, yeah, will there be any way for teachers who use this technology in their classes? And I guess I should explain that there's no class in the district that has a class set of iPads for a grade 2 class. Typically, it's a primary class that may have 3 or 4 iPads in use for kids who are getting some support on literacy or numeracy, specifically in different ways. You know, they're used as a center or as additional support. Maybe kids without IEPs, but kids who are not yet meeting expectations, who are using them for additional practice. So is there going to be any thought to how those teachers can access that kind of technology since they've lost it?
I think with that question, I'm going to start with Superintendent Whitten and maybe just explain what that pause on K-2 is about and what that could look like. And then go into Carolyn's question, which is what do those teachers do? And if you need support from other people in this room or on the screen.
Yep, thank you. Well, I will begin. Thanks for the question. And it's a very important one for all of us to explore the use of technology in the primary grades. And that's something that we're looking forward to do throughout next year. We're also mindful of the classrooms and teachers and learning opportunities that do rely heavily on or rely on iPads. So we want to do both a look and an overview and involve teacher voice in when and where and how these are being used. We're not removing, unless there is an issue with security, we're not looking to remove any of the current iPads that are in schools, but rather than refresh them at this point in time, we want to spend some time to really fully understand the use of them and to make sure that we're also using them in ways that are meeting the student needs. So you'll see in the additions that we are adding technology for students in order to access their learning, IEPs or AIPs. So that won't impact the K-2 environment, or it will impact to the positive. But with regards to just automatically refreshing technology, we do want to look at it more deeply into why we use it, when we use it, and how we use it in the primary, specifically in those grades.
Thank you. Did you have one other question?
Yeah, I guess just a comment on that. I mean, I would assume that the teachers in their classes who are using them in professional sense are always doing that, always analyzing why they use it, when they use it, and how they use it. I would suggest that those are the people that are best positioned to know if they need it or not, or how they're using it effectively. Chris, is there anything else that you were thinking that we wanted to ask at this time?
We can come back to you again.
Thanks.
I know
That'd
that
be
Norm's
helpful. Thank
waiting.
you.
Yeah, if you put your hand up again, if you've got another question. Norm. Norm, you're still on mute.
Yeah, there we go.
There.
I was just trying to unmute it. I was pushing the wrong button. So when we were talking about needing an electrician to do the fire alarms or just what have you, I was just wondering, it's like you guys were saying it was mandated, but I was trying to figure out how it was necessary for an electrician to do that job when custodians used to do that job at a lower rate, and they still got that job done like a yearly. And I was just trying to figure out like something I brought up before was if like in your budget surplus, I was just wondering if the three employees we have that have been working on capital jobs who were maintenance people, and they're getting paid out of the capital budget. I was wondering if their income was a part of that surplus. And yeah, that's about it so far.
Okay, thank you, Norman. Secretary Treasurer, do you or Marnie want to make any comments about the mandated position?
I would probably turn to Marnie to see, like, technically, I think it's around the documentation that requires someone who has is certified as an electrician, but perhaps you could expand on that.
Not much more to expand on. It's a certified electrician that needs to do it. It's not just checking the fire alarm and making sure it works, which the custodians used to do in conjunction with the different schools. It's actually making sure the fire panel is functioning as well. So you need specific training for that.
And your second question, I'm not sure we can answer that tonight, but perhaps we can have a conversation with Marnie or with Secretary Treasurer to get a good sense of what you were referring to as far as the capital positions and the savings. I'm not sure I'm clear on that, but we will definitely connect with you. Somebody will to find out more details from you. Would that work for you?
Sure, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of people on the screen? You can always put your hand up again. I'm going to go to the questions that were submitted, and I've got them, and some of them are kind of clustered together, and I will ask different people to give us an answer. So the first question was about the proportion of the budget covering substitute teachers. And the question is that what proportion of substitute teachers are on an unpaid leave compared to a paid leave? Can you answer that one, Secretary Treasurer?
Answer that. We were able to pull some data out of the system for the current year to date and the past 3 years, bearing in mind that it doesn't include all leave, so it doesn't include things like convocation or religious observance, but I would say like the main ones. And the percentage of unpaid leaves is between 3.5% of the total and 4.7%. So okay, I'd say between 3 and 5 over the past 4 years.
Thank you. The next question was about facilities. Why is the proportionally smaller than the provincial average? And that's actually shifted. This must have been somebody at a previous meeting where we showed it was just a little bit lower than the provincial average, the operational aspect, and now it's almost even. This one is looking at mental health, and that did come up quite a bit in all of our meetings. Is it possible for more sports or music or shop classes or community building with students? These can help with mental health and substance abuse. Is that a possibility for the future? And I'm going to go to Superintendent Whitten to maybe address that one. There's no budgetary question about this. It's just a general question.
Yeah, happy, and it's a great topic to have. As we know, mental health is evolving. It's a challenge certainly throughout our system and community. We do have a grant that comes in from the ministry as well as one that comes from the board. And through that grant, we're able to offer programming at elementary, middle, and secondary, as well as some student-led grants that go out. Every year we reassess and see if those are making or helping to make a difference. Part of the data that we receive through the student learning survey lets us know some of that, and we do try to explore different ways. It's important also to note that our extracurricular activities are volunteer led and highly reliant on the volunteers. So we're very thankful that we do have a strong volunteer base, and we're able to offer many sports and clubs. And also for some of the shop classes and music classes, again, for those, they're enrollment based and they are funded classes. So they do depend on the interest of students, but we do, I think, throughout Victoria School District have many different offerings in music and art and shop. And we always look to ways to support when interest comes forward. But again, I think we're thankful that we have the volunteer base that we have. We have clubs and classes that happen before and after school and at lunch. We also have advisory classes at middle school and homeroom classes throughout secondary and listen to student voice. So I think we're looking, we work with community also around mental health support. So challenging times, but we do try to provide those opportunities. And then just moving also to do a lot more outdoor learning. We know that learning outdoors is good for mental health as well. So physical activity, unstructured play, and different opportunities like that are areas that we try to focus in on.
And part of this person's question was, is the amount of free play at recess and lunch up to the individual schools? Or is it a district number? Excuse me.
For our elementary schools, we have common start and end times. So they're pretty standard across. We have nutrition breaks in the mornings, and then we also have the lunch break, and I think we have the students outside as much as we can. We also build in the elementary schools, and that's school dependent, but I know that they focus more in on having students outside. So it's a standard start and end time, but we do try to have students outside and unstructured as much as we can.
Thank you. Next question is, will there be funding to rebuild Sundance Bank Elementary School? What's happening there?
Yeah, I can answer that one.
Thanks.
We actually just recently received our capital response letter from the ministry. Sundance Bank seismic mitigation is a project that is currently being supported by the ministry. Our Facilities Services Department has been working closely with the ministry, and we are now at the final business case stage. And once that is approved, then they would announce funding for that.
Could you just refresh people's memory as to what's happened already with Sundance Bank consultation and?
Yeah, there has been, Facility Services, first of all, worked with an architect on the possibilities of what options exist on that site, bearing in mind that there's like a Gary Oak field and just one play field, quite a unique sort of rock outcropping that's used as a natural playscape for children. So they came up with some options that were a possibility, and they had an evening community consultation. So the school community, as well as all of the neighbors, the neighborhood association were invited to come to look at the options and provide their feedback. All of that feedback was collected and provided to the ministry.
Okay, good. And the ministry makes the decision.
Ministry does
Okay,
make the final decision.
thank you. This one came from a community member, and it's quite long, so I'm going to summarize it. This is I think a concern that taxpayer money isn't going to companies with from high-risk countries, and it goes on to talk about where we spend our budget and making sure that Canadian vendors get an option. So could you make some comments about that concern?
I can answer that one. We are actually more recently following some guidance from the ministry around our procurement, particularly with the potential impacts of tariffs from the US, and it's being suggested that we follow suit with the core government and purchase Canadian products or purchase from Canadian subsidiaries. And so we've already had that conversation internally with departments and schools. Also we have a purchasing department. And so every opportunity that we have to purchase Canadian products, we're doing that now. We do have, because we're public sector, and if we have large purchases, we do go out for competitive procurement processes like tenders and RFPs. So there are certain circumstances where we may be bound contractually to purchase from a company that could be in the US or selling US products. However, I think as we move forward and those opportunities come back around again, we'll certainly take a different look as we secure longer term contracts and supporting Canadian.
Thank you. How is the budget responsive to affordability challenges exacerbated by the tariff threats south of the border? For homeowners in particular, I think the question is kind of general around affordability. So what are we doing to be responsive to families and affordability? Superintendent, could you answer that perhaps?
I can try on. It is a big question with regards to affordability, particularly in Victoria. A couple of things. One, we do have a policy around ensuring that field trips and curricular opportunities are supported if financial circumstances are a barrier. So that's one thing that we have throughout the province. We also have the Feeding Futures grant that comes in to provide barrier-free access to food for students and families, and we know that rising cost in food is an issue throughout the city. So those are two areas that we have been able to provide support for families and support for students who may need that.
Thank you. The next question, I think I'll pass over to you too, Superintendent. As part of the budget process, how does the school board intend to address the growing inequities in schools? And they're talking about grounds and facilities, and over the next 5 years, will our school district look a little more equitable?
I think equity throughout our district is something that we are paying attention to. I think it'll be multi-year projects. We have grounds. We have the fortune of having large school grounds, and we also have the challenge of keeping those up to date. So we do look at our grounds and look at what we have in an equity lens. We know that we have had projects throughout the district with regards to either greening projects, looking at the naturescapes, looking at turf fields, looking at different amenities that are available. And we also know that we have buildings that are aging infrastructure. So within our work with senior leadership, as well as facilities, we look at what projects we can put on each year and receive funding from the ministry around. So we have Vic High is an excellent example of a project that brought forward some equity as well as some seismic safety. We have Cedar Hill that we look forward to opening in September. We have other projects that are coming forward, whether it's Sundance or Reynolds or Shoreline. There are other areas that throughout the district that we need to pay attention to, and I think we do that both by the seismic upgrades as well as the different things that we can do around the grounds, but one that we're always looking to try and do and address as we get funding and get available resources.
Thank you. We've talked already a little bit about mental health, and this next question is just, I'm wondering what the school district's going to use the money from the budget to support students with mental health. I'm still looking at you, Superintendent Whitten. Go ahead.
The funding will stay the same, I hope, certainly from the board around funding more mental health grants and different opportunities. And again, looking at those programs that we have and mental health and physical wellness are closely connected, as well as nutrition. So I think as we look at what we're doing throughout elementary, middle, and secondary, we need to pay attention to each of those areas. And also bring forward different social emotional learning opportunities. So again, I look at this as a multi-year project and one that we also rely heavily on community to support us with. But certainly we anticipate receiving some funds through this this budget cycle, as well as hopefully getting more from the ministry in the coming years.
Thank you. And the last question is, where are the supporting documents and analysis? And I'm going to pass it to Secretary Treasurer, maybe to just talk about the analysis that takes place.
Yeah, I'm assuming this is in relation to the items that have been.
I'm not sure. It's just the question. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm guessing that's what it is.
Yeah. So, yeah, each of the items that are listed there had its own level of internal analysis. Lots of conversations with department leaders and anyone that would be impacted, just to get an understanding of what each of the items are. And I can give you a couple of examples. So some of the items that are on the list are more around financial analysis. So if we're looking at legal fees, for example, we would look back historically to see what the nature of those fees were, and then make our best estimate as to what we might be facing in the future. Even more complex than that is understanding EA vacancies and absences and being unable to fill positions. A huge amount of work that's done by financial services in consultation with HR. So that work has been done, but it's not included in the agenda package. Other items that are on the list are like the devices, for example. We put forward a flat amount. So it's really just, there's not a lot of analysis in that particular amount, but it is, there will be future analysis that's tied to that one. So how will we allocate 200,000 across 47 schools? Yeah,
I think so. Good. And that was the last question. I'm going to go back to the table here and ask if there are any other questions that are on your mind. And just to remind people, the working group will meet tomorrow night. And then next week, we have a meeting on the 8th. And seeing no hands, I am going to thank you all for being here. If there are more questions that come to your mind or comments that you want to make, please submit them, and we will definitely take a look at them tomorrow night, and also through the weekend, and also throughout next week before the budget is finalized, because it isn't finalized yet. This is looking at where we are, and we know we have to have a balanced budget, and any reduction is a tough one, and I know that. That's what happens when you have a structural deficit that you've got to whittle down, and you can't quite get it to a zero without some reductions. So thank you all for being here, both on the screen and on YouTube, and we'll see you again next week.